The views and opinions expressed on the cap are those of the hosts. They do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Old Milk Media. Any opinions stated aren't intended to offend anyone. On this episode of the Cat Podcast, we react to "We Don't Trust You" by Future and Metro Boomin. Welcome back. This is episode 503 of your critical but accurate tour through hip hop, the Cat Podcast. We are your tour guides. I am Nate Sperlin. That is Taylor McLeod. Thank you for tuning in on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever else you might be tuning in. Do us a favor. Feel free to join the conversation in the comments below and hit a like on this video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for our subscribers so far. Taylor, how are you doing?
Man, last weekend it was the sun was out and I said I can't complain, and this weekend the sun is not out and I will complain.
I agree. It sucks over here, man. It's just straight rain all day. And then after
I know, and
that, it's gonna go from
we're
like 50 degrees to 30 in like 3 hours.
we're
Sucks.
on opposite coasts from each other with the same weather. It's
Yeah.
just terrible. But
Which
hey,
means the middle of the country must be having the best weather in the world.
maybe it's later on this year. Maybe later on this year we won't be on opposite coasts. We can see
Yeah.
what
Ooh.
happens.
Ooh, we're teasing something. Ooh. All right.
Maybe.
On this episode of the Cat Podcast, we are talking about "We Don't Trust You" by Future and Metro Boomin. The album is 17 tracks long, 59 minutes long, featuring The Weeknd, Playboi Carti, Travis Scott is a feature twice, Kendrick Lamar, Young Thug, and Rick Ross. Once again, feel free to join the conversation in the comments below. That being said, Taylor, what did you think about "We Don't Trust You"?
Well, I mean, obviously the first thing that came out of it was the Kendrick verse, and we'd be like kind of foolish to not at least talk about it. And I
Mhm.
think we'll talk about it a little more maybe in a different format soon. That definitely dominated the release, right? And I was so excited for the release, and I'm glad that I turned it on right when it came out so that I didn't go into it looking for this diss, right? Because that can be really kind of boring. It's like, all right, I'm just like listening. Man, my first reaction off this, Kendrick should decide, Drake should decide, all that aside. Metro Boomin puts Future in a position to win unlike anybody else.
Yeah.
There are three producers that I think Future works like this with. I think Metro's the best, but
Yeah.
then you have Esco and Zaytoven, right?
Mhm.
The people who have been made multiple iterations of work with him, right? Over multiple years. But Metro, my first reaction listening to 17 tracks, like, I don't know, 6 or 7 times at this point, is Metro Boomin puts Future in a position to succeed in a way that no other beatmaker producer can.
Yeah. For me, to piggyback off your point, actually, my expectations going in, like Metro Future created DS2. That's the most, besides maybe like Good Kid, Mad City, or a few other albums, that are just like universally recognized as classics. DS2 is probably the most impactful album that we've heard in our lifetimes. Obviously, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy is up there too, and there's a few others, but DS2 is in the conversation. So whenever I hear Metro and Future, it doesn't matter if they're making it doesn't matter if they're making a song, it doesn't matter if they're making an album, it doesn't matter if they're cooking food, if they're making a movie, it doesn't matter. My expectations are high because I just know that these two work so well together. Um, and I think that they follow through once again. I don't think there's any skips on this album at all. I think that also this album could be a potential instant classic because the music is so great, but also on top of that, the cultural impact that might come out of what's going on this album might be something that reverberates throughout the whole industry, and through that, this may be something that we can enter into instant classic territory. Obviously, we have to wait and see, because we have to like keep listening to it and see how long it goes and how many legs it has and stuff like that. But off the rip, it does have that. My initial thought on the Metro Boomin side is we know that we're gonna get 4 albums from Metro Boomin. This is the first one. Another one is supposed to come with Metro Boomin in the future again, and we don't know the other two. Maybe like JID is probably one of the names that have been floated out there. There have been other names floated out there as well. But this might be the year that Metro Boomin cements himself as the GOAT. I because especially if he potentially gets someone like maybe the week makes an album with the Weeknd or something like that, so then he has the versatility across genres, and they're all high quality music that has the um the material, the strength to run the year, and it's just all Metro, 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 we have to put him in the GOAT conversation. He's already there, but we have to further actually start talking about him in a way where we may not even talk about previous producers from yesteryears, from yester eras. So that's my initial thought on Metro Boomin. And like you said, with Future and Metro Boomin just puts Future, everybody, really every artist that comes in contact with a Metro beat is put in such a great position to succeed. And Future, the floor for this album was really high, but the ceiling is also very, very high. And I think that if they just like were on the floor or they met the floor of the expectation, I think that this still would have been a really, really good album for the year. But they actually might have made it up to the ceiling. And if they've made it up to the ceiling, then we have to start talking about like, is this the album of the year? Does this beat out 21 Savage for album of the year? American Dream for album of the year? And I think that there is a chance for that to happen, particularly because we know for a fact that Future and Metro Boomin are going to release another album this year. We know that for a fact. 21 Savage, a lot of what I was arguing about on that 21 Savage episode is if the movie comes out and gives that album a second wind, and then the album is able to last throughout the whole year, then that could be album of the year. But we know that now, we know that a movie isn't coming out. So because of that, that kind of loses American Dream kind of loses ground in that album of the year conversation. So I'm really, really excited to see how far We Don't Trust You goes. Yeah, though, am I missing anything? Oh, also, I also think this is such a great compilation of music. However, and this shows you how great of a moment this is for hip hop, it might be completely overshadowed by the Kendrick diss and by
Yeah.
Drake and not Drake, by Future and Metro Boomin basically dissing Drake. The Weeknd is in there too. And then we have to kind of ask like does Rick Ross know about what's going on this album? Does Travis Scott know about what's going on this album? So it kind of seems like there's kind of being a line drawn in the sand, and now we're gonna have like a full on hip hop war, with just like people going back and forth in bars and disses and stuff like that, and that's very very exciting because it's been pretty boring for probably like 2 3 years. There hasn't really been much of anything going on besides the women in rap beefing. But like we have like goats going at it against each
Yeah.
other, and for that reason, this album might potentially be a classic.
I mean, if this sparks something, I think the best case scenario is if Drake or Cole respond in the next couple weeks, and then Future and Metro have another album after that. And I wouldn't want to hear like a because I assume that album's done. You know what I mean? I wouldn't
Yeah.
want to hear like a tacked on like quick, response back to Cole or Drake. Like this is where we can separate from the whole album process and be like, oh, we're putting out singles again just because, not
Mhm.
singles because it's been a little dry lately and we gotta, try to like get something going on the internet. Like, no, like I like artists got to put the song out because they have to put the song out. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
it's the last time, the magnitude of things like this. Like there's been so much rap beef recently, like you said, with on the women's side of things, but also like there's been so much beef between a lot of smaller artists, but it's not like Kendrick on a Future and Metro album going after Cole and Drake. And I think Cole's kind of getting lumped into it just because he's on Drake's side at the moment right now.
Mhm.
That that verse is pointed at Drake. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's like, all right, this is all directed kind of at one person, but you happen to be over there with him right now, and you're trying to like do this like kumbaya thing. And I don't know. I'm glad we're getting into it right away because I don't think either me or you is like this is the most interesting part of this album to either of us,
Mhm.
right? But it is the most interesting thing to the internet right now, to the fan bases right now. Like Kendrick's diss wasn't particularly, I wasn't like, oh my God. It wasn't like when the Control verse happened and it was like, oh, okay, like Kendrick's here. It was like kind of him doing his 2020s thing, which he's been doing, like the weird voices and the, like he likes to add like a little lisp when he's rapping, you know what I mean? It's like a
Mhm.
real like behind the teeth like kind of situation. He's doing that. But I'm just glad that this might bring some like real competition between the top dogs back
Yeah.
because it is boring to just be like, all right, someone puts out an album all the other big artists either tweet it, put it on Instagram, or they don't say anything, and that's like kind of the end of it. It's like that's the end of the interaction, and everyone has like a stock feature from, every album has like a stock feature from. It used to be like, all right, everyone's gonna have Drake, everyone's gonna have 21, Gunna's probably gonna be involved. You might get a Future, Young Thug, and it's all gonna kind of just be this like kind of like throw it in a pile. It's like, yeah, it just feels like, all right, yeah, all right, I need a Drake verse for this. Let me go grab that. I need this. And now it's a little more like, all right, let's take a moment and be like, Kendrick just said came at Drake and Cole. Let's see what happens here. And hopefully it spurs something. I think the most underwhelming thing would be if just nothing happens,
Hmm.
because it's like, come on, you two can't be over there claiming that you're bigger than the Super Bowl, or you know what I mean? And like,
Hmm.
yeah, we're the big three, but each of us has our own claim. And then this guy comes over and it's like, no, like it's just me. You know what I mean? So you would think that something's going to happen from this.
Yeah.
And I'm excited for that possibility. But what has been nice is while everyone's been over there concentrating on this, I almost feel like I get to enjoy this album a little more, because it's like everyone's over there like in a big, it's like a cartoon like pile up fight over there where all the dust is flying. And then like I feel like me and you are like just over here like playing the rest of the music and being like, yep, Future.
Yeah, I mean, I've listened to the album front to back probably like 4 times, but I gotta be honest, I've listened to like that like 20 times, at least 20 times. Like I was on my way to work, and all I played was like that, like over and over
Yeah.
and over and over and over and over again, because it's just so exciting to hear Kendrick sound so aggressive, sound so hungry, sound so angry. We haven't really heard Kendrick like this angry in a while. Like, I mean, it reminds me of the Heart Part 4 when he's dissing Big Sean. I think it's not on the same level as Control, but I think it's up there in terms of diss tracks. Just reading out what Kendrick's saying. I mean, we're gonna get right into the song by song, but let's start with like that. First of all, the samples that Metro uses on like that, generation. The way that he incorporates it all together, especially at the end when Future's the third verse, Future's second verse cuts off, and then we just have that part where Metro can just like do his thing.
Yeah.
Generational, straight up generational. So him doing that by itself, the beat by itself, already generational. We're at a great start. Future does his thing, great song. That's not really one of the songs where Future is really going directly at Drake.
No.
There are times on the album where he does that,
Yeah.
but we're starting here. We're starting with the GOAT,
Well, I know. I mean,
Kendrick
he's
Lamar,
he's
Kung Fu
he's
Kendrick.
rapping about like losing a diamond because he's got his fingers in someone's mouth. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like
yeah,
we
that's what
like
he's
he's over
rapping
there like
about.
doing his normal Future thing, and then Kendrick's like in the corner like getting hyped up. Like all right,
um, here's what Kendrick said. Bucks need this in first person shooter. I hope they came with 3 switches. And he also said, motherfuck the big three. Nigga, it's just big me. Also, he also said, nigga bum before your dog's getting buried. That's a K with all these nines. He gonna see a pet cemetery. Okay. That's obviously at Drake. I think J. Cole is just catching strays because J. Cole just
yes,
happens to be on the song. I honestly, the whole conversation about Kendrick versus J. Cole, you're missing the point. J.
yeah, it's
Cole,
not
if J.
right.
Cole responds, it's probably gonna be um let me say it this way. The chances that J. Cole actually responds with an actual Kendrick diss are slim to none. If J. Cole responds, it's probably gonna be something where he's saying, no, I still like it's all competitive beef or whatever like that. Cause like those two, they've never really like had friction. Kendrick and Drake have had friction for a while.
Yeah,
And because of that, like, and also in a way, like I feel like J. Cole could also kind of understand, like, that's my homie. He doesn't like homie over here. I went over here with homie. It makes sense why I'm catching these strays. Like, I probably
yeah,
shouldn't have, like, if I didn't want to catch any strays, I probably shouldn't have done that. Regardless of the situation. Kendrick doing that on like that, especially with that beat, with the aggressiveness in his voice and stuff like that. It's just so crazy to me how every time Kendrick drops a feature or drops an album or something like that, he's it's like everybody's like, oh no, Kendrick, like everybody's here, everybody's talking about, oh, J. Cole is like the better, like best of all time, or like there's been a increase of J. Cole, I wouldn't say propaganda, but J. Cole being the best out of the three talk in
yeah,
like recent months. And Kendrick just shut all that shit down. I gotta be honest with you.
yeah. Well, it's really just a matter of like it's just differences in style, right? And it's
Mhm.
like Cole's been putting out the best raps for like 5 years at this point, because he's the only one that it feels like is consistently just being like, yeah, I love like the art of this, like
Yeah.
like not the art of music making in making an album in the, the creative process, but just like the sport of like rapping, right? It
Yeah.
seems like Cole is the most interested in keeping that up, right? Where he's just like, no, like I love doing this. And in the last 3 years specifically, Drake has become very like, I don't know. We talked about it, and we've liked some of the stuff. Maybe have been a little more lukewarm on other stuff where he's chasing like a sound that feels much younger than he is. So like in the last 3 years, I feel like Drake is almost, because he's been so in another world, is almost, in my opinion, put himself at three just in terms of actual
Hmm.
rapping, because he's like, but I think they've always bounced up and down in that ranking. And no matter what Kendrick says, like that is the big three. Like, you know what I mean? Like we all recognize it as that. And I understand that he's like, I like, he doesn't, he's trying to, it's just a creative way to be like, no, it's none of that. But which I can, I appreciate. And my last point here is like, obviously as like a huge Drake fan for a very long time now, my fandom has changed recently because the music just like doesn't feel like it's for me anymore the
Hmm.
way it used to. Drake and Kendrick beefing, I love that, right? Like I'm excited for that. I'm excited to see what happens. I don't have any of the like, oh no, like Drake's gonna get, Kendrick's gonna like kill it. Like I don't care. I just want them to go back and forth because I think that's the best matchup here.
Hmm.
Drake and Future is devastating. Like that was a little moment of silence for Drake and Future because that hurts, man.
Yeah.
Like hearing this diss, I played it at 9 p.m. Pacific time when it came out, but then I woke up, played it again, and as I was playing it more and more, like the clouds rolled in and
Hmm.
it got real windy, and it just like it felt like a spiritual like divide, and that's devastating. Like I don't care about Drake and Kendrick. Like that's not a relationship that's been a thing for like over a decade now. Drake and Future, that one's tough, man.
Yeah.
That one, that one hurts my feelings. That one
Yeah.
hurts my feelings, and we can get into a little like song stuff with that because "We Don't Trust You," incredible intro.
Yes.
Metro shows off
Yes.
on that first one. He's got like the super like 80 like pop drums, and then that second verse by Future when he calls Drake his number one fan. But
I actually have it right here.
the line that stands
Um,
out to me
yeah.
in here. So the line that stands out to me is the one right after it where he says like, "Sneak this and I don't understand, dog."
Hmm. Pillow,
You could
just to carry on after that. Pillow talking, acting like a fed dog. I don't need a fake friend, dog. Can't be about a hoe because we sharing, dog. In your feelings, nigga. Why you playing, dog?
like
That's the
the one
second
where he's like
verse
the one
or
where he's
part
like
of it.
sneak this and I don't understand, dog.
Hmm.
I was like, that's kind of how it feels. This Future Drake thing kind of feels like it came out of nowhere
Hmm.
right around the her loss time. And it
Hmm.
was a little like because we were having What a Time to Be Alive 2 rumors coming out around that point, and we were like, oh, Drake and Future, like Drake was on 2 songs on Future's last album, so it's like, okay, they're back in the studio together, and then Drake, I don't know obviously it seems like seems like there's a love interest, maybe a shared love interest involved here, but
Hmm.
like it kind of feels like we were on this path to like What a Time 2, and
Hmm.
then Drake just picked 21 instead.
Yeah. I mean, on top of that too, I think that to your point about Metro's role on this track, it kind of like at least the first 30 seconds, it kind of feels like thought it was a drought to me. Like the
Yeah,
slow melody, and then it starts picking up, and then we hear Future, and then it's just like instant, this is amazing, like
bro,
type of
the
thing.
pain in I haven't Future, right? He's heartbroken on so much of his music. I don't know if
Mhm.
I've ever heard him this hurt.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is
It's
like when he's like fake written all over you, hate written all over you, like, and then the verse, his second verse, I've only ever really heard him use that inflection on his voice on News or Something, which is
mhm.
it's an old
I
song,
love News or
where
Something. One of my
it's more like
favorites.
his regular voice. It's
Yeah.
not so much like Future, right? It's more
Hmm.
like, all right, no, it's like that's tough, and
Yeah.
we don't got to spend too long because I'm getting sad. Honestly, I'm getting sad.
Yeah, I know. I can hear it in your
But
voice. I
no,
genuinely can
man,
hear it
like
in your voice.
those are like two of my favorite. You know
Hey,
what I mean? Like
we're a podcast. Nobody's gonna call you sassy if you cry. I
like
understand.
that that
I
that
genuinely understand.
that duo is like my favorite hip hop duo collab ever. You know what I mean? And to know that, it's just crazy. But
Yeah.
on the positive side, still love Future and still love Metro Boomin. And if it really comes to war, I don't really know if I'll be on a side. Obviously, I'm not involved at all. No one cares about me.
Hmm.
But as a fan, if I'm having to pick sides, I don't know. It might be a situation where I let everyone fight and I just play one at a time by myself because I'm
Just
not giving
playing
it
one at
up.
a time while that cartoon that
Yeah,
cartoon fight is over there. Like,
right.
oh, okay.
But back to this. That intro, instrumental, the intro on this is unbelievable.
Mhm.
Like the feeling you get, and then it runs so perfectly into Young Metro. Like that
Mhm.
first one is like this intro, and then the second one is like, oh no, like this is really Metro Boomin. And I forget that Metro Boomin is really just like coming into his like he's like what, like 30 now, something like that. Like
Something like that. Maybe like, yeah.
you forget that he was really young
Mhm.
when DS2 and all that was coming out. So he was still like kind of like a prodigy at that point. And speaking of prodigy, I love all the prodigy skits throughout this album. I mean, it's
About the
unbelievable.
Prodigy skits though, there's no way that these are not aimed at Drake.
No,
On just to go
yeah,
through them, like on Ice Attack, there's one. I believe this is towards the end. Lots of corny ass niggas, man. Lots of corny rappers. I'm just like, yo, man. I could list the name of I could list 100 corny ass rappers. That's the Prodigy snippet on Ice Attack. Let's see, what else do we have? On there was another one on another song where he's basically talking about like do something, like be an individual, basically was
yeah.
the theme of that one. And who is the one that is known for like hopping on everybody's wave and stuff like that? It's Drake. It's like
Well,
there's
it's and
no
it's
way
yeah.
that these aren't aimed at Drake.
I think it's a right. I think it applies to a lot of people, right?
Hmm.
I think this applies to a lot of people, but I think it's really like these last 3 years of Drake, like and you can even call it the last 2 years, like post Certified Lover Boy. But if you want to include Certified Lover Boy in this conversation, this
Hmm.
whole era has been like probably like the most like disingenuous Drake we've ever gotten,
Hmm.
right? Where it's not like there aren't those like little moments of like levity in between where it's like, all right, yeah, like, yes, he is like doing this like kind of like Lil Yachty, Playboy Cardi, like amalgamation thing where he's got everything like slammed together as this, like this 19-year-old, 40-year-old. And it's a very like, it's just been like weird the last couple years. And I feel pretty comfortable saying that. And this whole album, and we'll get into it because I think Everyday Hustle is a great example of like some adult reps. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? We talked about Blue Lips 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, where it's like, and
three
I
weeks
said
ago.
it, I was
Hmm.
like, this feels like there's an adult in the room, and I think that's important because this genre has always like since you and I have been listening to it, so caught 15 years since we were really old enough to like go seek it out and be like, all right, this is what in developed taste first in the beginning it was so important to become like one of the ones, right? It was
Hmm.
important to make it there. And now it's definitely like it's a because you can make it there overnight now. You can go from not known to like
Hmm.
being considered like the hottest out because of a one video, two videos. And so I think the Prodigy stuff applies to a lot of people, but I think this whole album is it just so like it's such like a core like hip hop album, and it's kind of like telling Drake and everyone else like, no, like let's bring this back to what it was supposed to be when it was like a real competition, and it wasn't all right, what can I do to sell the most? It's like, that will always matter, but it's like who can make the best rap album here, who can do this the best, because things have gotten so watered down. And like you said, there's really like no skips on here. There's no song on here that just feels like a throwaway future, like, like he can do
Yeah.
this. And I think
Mhm.
that's what you get with Metro Boomin. It's not to say anything else about any other producers he works with, but like no one can get Future to try so many things and be so like good at so many things across the whole album. I mean, here we have We Don't Trust You, right, in Young Metro, which feel kind of like the superheroes and villains, like that
Yeah.
big feeling, like the cinematic. And then Claustrophobic is like just like a super like flexy Future song.
Claustrophobic is
But
so
then
good.
it's so good. And then
So good.
I want to talk about Cinderella, because two things, more than two things. Instrumental on that's crazy. The beat's
Yes.
crazy.
Hmm.
Future Future is gliding on that. Like
Yes.
that, he is so good. And then something you and I talk about all the time, they didn't have to change the song for
No,
Travis.
I
Yeah,
was just about to get ready to say
yeah,
on the other, what was the other song that Travis on Type Shit? They changed the song, they changed the beat
yeah, a
on Type
little
Shit
bit.
for
Even that though
Travis.
is not like
Yeah.
where it normally is, where normally you have to like turn off all the
Yeah.
lights and you have to like light a candle in the corner and be like, all right, Travis is here.
Just black
Like
out the whole
Travis,
arena.
yeah, Travis just showed up on Cinderella,
Yeah.
gave a verse, then did
Yeah.
Future's like hook, and I was like, Okay.
Yeah,
All right. You
yeah.
know, I love that. And then so Cinderella running out of time and Fried is a very like kind of like upbeat,
Mhm.
more like Future. And then I don't know, man. And then Everyday Hustle's crazy.
Yes.
Like you get super hip hop Future, which I've only really heard him like that a couple times. But like one example, he did a song Earth with Mac Miller like 10 years ago, 11 years ago,
Hmm.
where it's just like a super hip hop instrumental and it's just Future's regular voice. It's not like him, being like the all encompassing like God that, he's proven to be.
Hmm.
Everyday Hustle's crazy because you have him and Ross on the first half of the beat, and then the second half is very much like I love when Future's just like, oh, I know I'm good at the modern rap, and he's like kind of like the pioneer of a lot of that. But
Hmm.
I love it when he just gets on like a classic hip hop beat and is like, no, I can do all of this
Yeah.
just as well as anybody here.
I think the person who shines the most on this album, or not on this album, on Everyday Hustle, is really Metro Boomin because we've run through how many. I think this is probably like what track, maybe like track 14, track 13 on the album. So we've heard
Yeah,
like 12, 13 tracks before this with um different types of bags that Metro can get into, and then Metro gets into this bag with that slow sample melody like under it, like Rick Ross, like you're basically just like putting the ball on the tee for Rick Ross and knocking off the park at this point.
yeah,
And that goes to show Metro Boomin's greatness of him being able to put, it doesn't matter what artist, like he could just put any artist in the place that they need to be for them to succeed. And I think that Everyday Hustle, that beat shows Metro Boom being able to do that. Future being able to adjust to that beat as well. Really, really amazing.
yeah.
Rick Ross doesn't really do anything we haven't heard of before, although Rick Ross once again knocks the beat out of the park. But just Metro Boomin understanding this is Rick Ross, and like
Well,
I
it's
know exactly what
yes,
bag he needs to be in. Let me make something for him to be in his bag.
and then it's that right. He's like makes the beat. I don't know if it was with Ross in mind, but it's like all right, he put that pairing together. But then it's also like he is able to get Future to because other producers don't get Future to stray
Yeah.
like that. To be like, you know what I mean? Like someone like ATL Jacob, I think about a lot because that's who Future's been working with recently. They do more of like the I wouldn't say poppy, but you know what I mean,
Yeah.
like the Future's like kind
It's
of
more
more like
cookie cutter
this the
kind of.
smoother, yeah, right, exactly. And there's nothing wrong with that. You need that. Like that's the consistency, right? That's where Future can be like, but Metro will get not just Future, but specifically because Future's like one of my favorites. He will get him to do things that other producers won't. Like I can't think of another producer getting Future on like a two different
Hmm.
super like boom bat beats in the middle of an album that has this big Drake thing going on, that has this other stuff going on that's long awaited. And I think the albums where it's one producer and one rapper, that's the core of it, are so important because then you can try different things but still have that through line. Like me and you, we've talked about it a lot. When there's like multiple sounds on an album, that always doesn't work. But when you have the same two people carrying out those sounds, it's like the common thread is them. And
Hmm.
yeah, it's Everyday Hustle is a great example of just where they're at. And then I mean the last two are crazy. Seen It All, What the Fuck You Mean? Those are good. And then Where My Twin At is like this like light, like airy. It
Yeah.
obviously reading into it, it feels like it's a Young Thug kind of like a
Hmm.
like a Young Thug like support song, which is obviously great. So it's a good intro to it. Yeah, it's just
Honestly,
two of the best, man. Like doing what they
the
do best.
the only issue I have with this album, and it's kind of well, really only two issues I have. I'm not full because they have Where My Twin At as listed as a bonus. That should just be the outro. Take the bonus off of it. That should just be the
Yeah,
outro. And my second issue, and it's not really anything that anyone could control. I would have loved the verse on Slime In from Young Thug. I would have loved to hear Young Thug on Cinderella. There's a few other tracks that I would have loved to hear Young Thug on. Not really sure if Young Thug would have did it because I'm sure Young Thug and Drake are close. Yeah, they're close. So, Young Thug maybe understanding that this is an album that's directed towards Drake. Maybe he doesn't get on these tracks, but I think that's the one thing out of everything that if I had to say, I feel like I'm robbed from this album. It's there's just not that much Young Thug on here
yeah,
for obvious reasons. Um, One other thing I do want to point out though, on type shit, Playboy Cardi, he sounds good. I like
yeah.
that better than the whole lot of red stuff. It's not like the original like Playboy Cardi or Die Lit Playboy Cardi that I love, absolutely love. But I like this. And I also think it's kind of ironic because I think on this song type shit, Playboy Cardi sounds a lot like Lil Yachty. And it's just ironic because Lil Yachty put out a single last week. And people are saying, "Oh, you trying to bite Playboy Cardi style? Like, why you doing that?" And it's just ironic to me how it just like flipped. So
Yeah.
that's just kind of funny to me. But before we get to final thoughts, how far do you see this album lasting or going?
I mean, if the second album really comes on April 12th, which I have no reason to believe it's not going to come, I trust Metro with the rollout way more than Future.
Yeah.
Like when Metro's like, yeah, this is the date it's coming out, I'm like, all right, I trust Metro Boomin to tell me the date, right? So it's like,
Mhm.
okay, cool. April 12th. If that is another album like this, because last time we got two, it was Future first and then Hendrix, right?
Yes.
Hendrix to me is better than Future. If we get a better album in a couple weeks, both of them are going to last for this year. And the thing about Future albums is they last a long time because Future
Yeah.
fans are like real fans. Like they don't
Mhm.
stop playing Future. So with the Kendrick thing, with the songs here, Justice album, easily through the rest of the year. I think this will be, it won't like, it wouldn't win a Grammy for album of the year. And I think that's just a different conversation. That's a
Mhm.
conversation about the Grammys. But I think in terms of like what people are really listening to, I think this will compete for album of the year. So I'm giving it for me and objectively at least for the rest of the year. And there are songs here that are going to be played, for as long as I'm listening to music and as long as like people are playing Future.
I completely agree with you, especially if this spurs on the moment that we're expecting in hip
Yes.
hop. For like, I think that we're gonna be 5 years in like 2029. We're gonna be looking back on this album and claiming it's a classic. Because if we get Kendrick Future versus Drake beef out of this, that's gonna completely dominate the scene, the music scene for however long it plans on going on. So very very excited for that. I agree with you. I think it's gonna last a full year, or maybe even more than that. But I will say, just as a disclaimer, I will say that I never liked you. I thought that would also last a long time, and for me, it didn't really last that long compared to like previous Future works.
It wasn't
So
Metro.
yeah, that's a fact. That's a fact. That being said, what are your final thoughts?
My final thoughts are these are two of the best, if not the best, at what they do for their generation. I think that Metro Boomin and Future both play very similar roles in the transformation of hip hop since Future is a little earlier than Metro, and that's just because Metro was so young at this point.
Mhm.
But since like, 2012, 2013, the two of them have really molded what everything sounds like and what everything looks like in, how things are rolled out. So this to me, this is just two of the most important, two of the best artists of their generation doing what they do best and adding on a level of excitement because of the potential for big time rap beef that will turn into rap beef. And I don't anticipate, anything else coming out of that. Maybe it'll get messy, especially if Drake and Future are involved, but it'll real rap beef. And then we have another album coming.
Yes.
Right. So it's two of the best artists of their generation, if not the best artists of their generation, coming together at a very interesting time in hip hop and like bringing some of the feeling back to this music that we love so much and then kind of like rolling out the carpet for a lot more to come.
Yeah. Top three tracks.
Top three tracks. Number one is Cinderella. That song goes so crazy. Number two is the intro, We Don't Trust You. And then number three is Everyday Hustle.
My two honorable mentions are Cinderella and Everyday Hustle. Number three for me, top three tracks are Claustrophobic. Number two is We Don't Trust You, and number one is Like That. As far as my last thoughts, kind of did this in reverse this time. I think Metro Boomin is starting his quest to cement himself as the greatest producer of all time. And that starts with We Don't Trust You. And Future, like he creates an instant classic because there's a great mix of music and potentially culture changing moments here. This is certainly an album of the year contender. All right. This has been the Cat Podcast, episode 503. Don't forget to leave your opinion of We Don't Trust You in the comments below. If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Follow Old Milk on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok at Old Milk Media. Check out all the content at oldmilk.co. I am Nate Sperling. That is Taylor McLeod, and we will see you when hip hop tells us to. We are out. Thank you for watching.